Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
what do you call it when you realize you've forgotten a very important science credit and you won't be able to graduate?
I don't know. What do you call it?
A Bioshock!
Oh my god.
Hello, and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
See, it was on theme, and on theme. It was on...
I think you didn't do the inflection right, though. I feel like you should have been like, a Bioshock. As opposed to just saying the word.
Bioshock. I don't feel like it plays... I mean, you're micromanaging my jokes here.
I'm sorry. I'm very picky.
You want to tell the jokes?
No, I really don't.
Do you want to tell the jokes?
I really don't.
I thought that this one, as my jokes go, was comparatively strong. It didn't just rely... It was actually a sort of a joke.
Uh-huh.
As opposed to just, here are the words that are in the titles.
Uh-huh.
So we're working hard. But it was funny. It was funny because it was on theme and on life theme.
Yep.
Have you made sure that you don't have any missing credits?
I have made sure.
Twice.
I had my graduation clearance thing with my advisor, so...
Well, there you go. Who am I to introduce the idea of a Bioshock when your graduation clearance advisor has already ruled it out?
AP Enviro, baby. Got me through that Bioshock.
AP Enviro got me through Bioshock. Words that have never been spoken before. Maybe Bioshock got me through AP Bio.
Yeah.
Or AP Enviro. So thanks for tuning in, folks. This is a main episode, and one of those all too rare these days, in-person Talk This recording sessions.
Actually, it's not that rare these days.
Yeah, it's not that rare these days, but, you know.
We've had a lot recently.
It's like once a month.
Yeah.
So, you know. But here we are in the midst of our academic vacation, you know. And, of course, bringing that usual sweet Talk This content right to your earbuds. So this week, we're going to be talking about, surprise, surprise, Bioshock, and also Unravel 2. So definitely an interesting array of games that I'm already concerned about how I'm going to mash up.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
We're going to push that anxiety off for about another half an hour.
Yeah.
And start off by talking about this week's older game, Bioshock.
Which is not Castlevania.
Which is not, as we mistakenly said last week, with crystal clarity. And this is why we don't announce what we're talking about in advance, because we were wrong. Not Castlevania.
Sorry.
I was like, they don't even sound similar in any way.
Yeah.
Nothing about them is similar.
I was looking on the webpage, and I was like, it's either Borderlands or Castlevania or Bioshock.
Oh wow, I thought you were going to have picked...
Castlevania sounds familiar.
I thought you were going to have picked two. That, like, it's either Borderlands... Have we not talked about Borderlands?
No,
really?
We haven't talked about Borderlands yet.
Wow. Crazy. Anyway, Bioshock. So Bioshock is a 2007, although for those of us who are in the PlayStation...
Cult?
Yeah, I guess.
Fan club?
Fan club is better. It's 2008. A first-person shooter from 2K Boston. Go, Emma. AKA now Irrational Studios.
AKA now Ghost Town Studios.
Oh, they changed it again?
Yes.
Great. That's funny.
It's sort of... I'm not entirely sure that Ghost Town is technically the same as Irrational, but it's Ken Levine's company now.
Gotcha. That makes sense then. So it's a spiritual successor to System Shock, which is one of those games that I feel like I refer to games being spiritual successors to System Shock or inspired
but I'm not
by
really
System
sure
Shock,
what it is.
And I don't really know what it is. And I always try, I'm like, okay, part of my research this week has to be to, like, go and read up on System Shock. And I try to do it, and it's just like, no, I have too much to learn for the other things. So here's the note I wrote for myself. You're a hacker at a space station.
Well,
so
that's
now
all
I
you
know
need to
100% more about System Shock than I ever have before. Please, someone write in and give me a primer on System Shock.
I bet it's somewhat like Bioshock.
I had not made the shock connection until just this moment. Would you believe that?
Well, I'm just saying, since it's a spiritual successor, you'd imagine that it successes in some way.
Succeeds,
whatever.
college graduate, everyone. So it's set in 1960, where you play as Jack, who your airplane crashes near the underwater city of Rapture, which already that should be enough to be like, maybe I'm going to turn around. My plane crashes near an underwater city called Rapture.
Well,
like,
what
bye-bye.
else are you going to do, right? Like, you find the place that, like, sends you underwater and, you know, I mean, your plane crashed in the middle of the ocean, right? So, like, are you just going to, like, stay by the elevator that takes you down until somebody comes looking for you? Or are you going to go down in the elevator?
People will come looking for you.
Well, yeah, but you need, like, you know, food and water and stuff.
It's not going to take them more than a couple of days. You'll live.
No, you won't.
A couple days? Yes, you will.
Okay.
You'll be very hungry and very sad and thirsty, but you would live.
Okay.
I'm just saying, better than the alternative.
Sure.
Of swimming into Rapture.
Sure.
But whatever.
You don't swim into Rapture.
Okay.
You don't swim all the way down to the underwater city.
I realize this.
Just to put that out there for the listeners.
That was just a metaphor, not a literal. It's not like there's not 2 hours of abzu at the beginning before you get to play Bioshock.
Uh-huh.
So it's this like dystopian society which has this really complicated lore, which I am going to do my best to summarize here, but please know that probably I am missing some important chunks.
I mean, you can just it's a city that was founded by a guy named
his last name is Ryan.
Andrew Ryan, which, if you may be thinking, if you like books or philosophy, I guess, Andrew Ryan, man, that sounds a little bit like Ayn Rand. And you know what? That would be on purpose.
Who would think that?
I don't know. It does sound like it, doesn't it?
I mean, have people said that, or did you just make that up?
No, that's real.
Okay.
It's like sort of like
Andrew Ryan. That's so dumb.
Ayn Rand. Because it's a city that Andrew Ryan decided to found basically on the principles of objectivism, which is Ayn Rand's philosophy.
Yeah. And he's also sort of modeled on Rockefeller, right, as this sort of business tycoon who, like, founds this underwater city and is, like, sort of visionary at first until they discover ATOM, which probably is an acronym for something, but I didn't see it anywhere, which is this genetic material, basically, that grants superhuman powers, which, of course, you know, once everybody has a quirk, the city goes into chaos. And this is My Hero Academia underwater. Just kidding. It's darker than that, I guess. But basically, it, like, throws the whole city into chaos, right? Especially when these two folks, Frank Fontaine, who sounds like a mobster to me, and I think he sort of is, right? Yeah,
he's running the black market that sort of causes the atom production to go out of control.
Yeah. So he's partnered with Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum, who are basically mass-producing atom, and get excited for this, folks, in the stomachs of orphaned girls called Little Sisters.
Yeah.
Who came up with this game?
Ken Levine.
Why was he sitting there being like, you know where this should be made? Orphan stomachs. Anyway, just like things you don't think about. So basically, to protect these little sisters, right, they created these like giant scary protector things called Big Daddies that want to protect the little sisters. And so a lot of what you do as Atlas, who's this sort of like, there's so much lore here. There's like so much. I'm thinking of that backstory presentation that guy gave. I'm like, wow, he should not find out about Bioshock.
He talked about Bioshock.
I know he
you
did.
You find
You're
out
right.
most of this through like audio logs.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. And I believe like you're sort of guided through Rapture by a guy who introduces himself to you as Atlas, and he also sort of explains what's going on. Perhaps because of who Atlas actually is.
Atlas,
that
like
you find out.
Atlas Shrugged.
Yes, like Atlas Shrugged.
This is all making more sense.
Yeah. No, Bioshock's famous for a lot of things, but there's a decent debate that goes on whether it's pro or anti-objectivism in the end.
We'll have to get Clickbait Boyfriend on here.
Yeah.
Settle the debate. Just kidding. I don't think he's an Ayn Rand expert, but, you know, philosophy's all the same, right? Anyway, so Atlas, was like sort of this like voice of the people during this period of chaos before Rapture kind of completely disintegrated. And so he guides you into Rapture, and you do a lot of fighting and the big daddies and sneaking around, and maybe or maybe not rescuing the little sisters, right? Because we've got this like lovely black and white morality system.
Yeah.
That comes into play here. And eventually, and again, we literally spoiled this in an academic presentation.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
not
fine.
but a few days ago.
I would be shocked if there was anyone who is at all into video games that did not know about this thing. And even if once you do know about it, I don't think that necessarily ruins the experience of it.
You would be what?
Yeah, you're very funny. I understand.
It's funny, that's all.
Okay.
So basically, eventually you find out, and this is where, for just a minute, I sort of lost the thread before we got back to the real twist, that apparently you're Andrew Ryan's illegitimate child, and you've been genetically modified to age rapidly, so just like the soap opera kids.
Yes.
But, like, Fontaine, like, stole you from his mistress to use as like a weapon because there's like this bathysphere that he can't get into, but because you've got Ryan's like genetic material, DNA, whatever, you'll be able to get him in, and then you can like kill him and take over once and for all. But obviously that didn't work because when you get there, I've lost my own track.
It does work for him to start with.
Right, it does work for him to start with. I mean, he gets you there. He's been posing as Atlas the whole time. And you find Ryan, right? And you stop referring to him as Ryan. Andrew Ryan. His first name isn't Ryan. And Fontaine tells you that a man chooses, a slave obeys. That's my dramatic reading.
Is that not? I thought Andrew Ryan gives that speech.
Oh, he does. You're right.
Yeah.
See, I'm having a very hard time because there's so many identities here. You're right. He does.
Yeah. It's pretty famous.
Yeah.
Line.
Thanks for the shade. I just mixed up the names.
It's okay.
I'm at this point where I'm like, who is my dad?
Who is my dad?
Which one?
The big daddies, obviously.
Duh. And then he asks you, I've put myself in a phrase where I was going to be like, he asks you to kindly kill him, but like, that's not, you can't say it that way. He asks you, would you kindly kill him with a golf club? And you do.
Yep. So basically in that scene, you're like confronting Andrew Ryan, you're like ready to do what you came there to do, and then he starts talking to you, and then you start saying like, hey, would you kindly sit? Would you kindly stand? Would you kindly run over there? And the control is entirely wrested from you as the player, and it just plays out in a cutscene with your perspective doing these things. And then you start thinking about all the times that Atlas, through your communicator, has been saying, hey man, would you kindly go over here? Or would you kindly lower your weapon for a second? Or would you kindly, do this and that and that? And basically it's, even when your plane crashed, there was a note in a box with a gun that said, hey, Jack, Mom and Dad love you. Would you kindly not use this until these specific geographic coordinates, so that you will crash your plane right near where Rapture is. So yeah, it was a big twist.
So I know that you don't see that scene with the gun until like this point in the story.
Yeah.
But like, how am I meant to? Does Jack not remember this?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't believe he remembers doing it.
Okay. That makes more sense then, because I was like, how does he then, having that knowledge from the beginning, even though the player doesn't have it, would be weird. Maybe not super weird.
I mean, it's a hypnotic
weird.
Trigger, so
right.
Fair
enough. But you then remember killing Ryan. Like, it's not like you walk away and you're like, what just happened?
Yeah. It's a game. Oh
my god. I guess. I don't know. Maybe in the plane crash you hit your head.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like, you know, there's something relatively, like, traumatic about being in a plane crash that I imagine
Relatively.
also scramble up your brain for a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Notably, I thought it was interesting. I was reading, so like, the thing goes on, and we'll talk more about what happens at the end of the game, I think. But like this game play tested really badly, like several times.
Mm-hmm.
People hated it. They were like, "It's too dark. I don't identify with Jack, and I don't trust Atlas." And part of that was because originally Atlas had a voice that was described when I was reading about it as, quote, a lecherous Colonel Sanders, like this like southern drawl, which makes the "would you kindly" blend in. I can sort of see why you would do that, so no one would notice that trigger, because it seems like something that a lecherous Colonel Sanders would say, just as a normal vocal tick. But man, that would be a strong choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyway, I just thought that was interesting that they, you know, basically had to completely redo the vocals.
Yeah.
But jumping back to sort of where we are in the story at this point, so Dr. T helps you, like, shake this programming a little bit, right? And so you and the little sisters go ahead and fight this now, like, he's, like, eating a lot of Adam. Or do you eat it? I don't know.
I think you inject it, because I think you have to do that to yourself, like, over the course of the game, too.
Right. That makes sense.
Like, you get new powers by basically, like, injecting Adam into yourself. I think that's Adam that you're injecting in yourself. I don't know what other thing it would be.
Less fun than eating it, but okay. I mean, maybe he ate it. Maybe that, you know.
Maybe.
Did a lot of injecting himself. And so you and the little sisters fight this, like, superhuman Fontaine, and hey, that morality system's got to kick in right now. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
So we got a good ending. Again, spoilers, I guess. Where if you ended up saving all the little sisters, or if you harvested only one of them, because man can't be perfect.
No, if you harvest even one, it's a bad ending. I'm almost positive.
Wikipedia disagrees with you, dude.
Really?
I'll look it up right now.
I've seen several places that talk about how it doesn't feel fair that even if you harvest one, you still get the bad ending.
Didn't feel fair to that little sister either. Let's see. Keep talking about something while I look this up.
So...
Yeah, sorry. I literally just told you to keep talking, then I found it. Here we go, straight from the Wikipedia article itself. If the player rescues all of the little sisters, or harvests only one of them.
I want to get verification on that. We'll post an addendum at some point after this.
Wouldn't that be devious if someone on Wikipedia was like, let's ruin this for all of them?
Well, I don't know if it's ruining it for anybody or if somebody's just mistaken and thought that they harvested one, but they didn't really. But I'd been under the impression that you can't harvest any. But regardless, so in the good ending, you live to an old age, and all the little sisters are your daughters, and, you know, they you hang out with you, and you're very happy. And in the bad ending, bad things happen. I don't really specifically remember what happens in the bad ending.
It's kind of alarming. Also, I've now seen on gaming.stackexchange.com somebody also saying you can harvest one. Okay. Which is obviously a reputable source. Maybe in Bioshock 2, it's harsher.
I don't think there's a harvesting system in Bioshock 2.
Never mind.
Well, maybe there is.
It seems like there is.
Okay.
Anyway.
But that doesn't... Okay, whatever.
Whatever. We're gonna be forgiving. You can harvest one small child. Just one. For your own personal injecting purposes. Just one. But in the bad ending, apparently there are sort of like two versions. I mean, it's the same sort of ending, but like one of them is worse. Uh-huh. So like, if in the bad ending, just like sort of like the normal-ish bad ending, I think, you kill Fontaine and then you harvest all the little sisters that helped you and become strong and stay in Rapture, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's like, it gets even worse if like the U.S. Navy comes for some reason and you like, or like they're just like sailing over and you like attack their ships and steal nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. And she's like, he's become dangerous or something. And then, you know, in the voiceover. I don't know why I said it like that, but, so yeah, and the good ending seems to be canon, but, yeah, you know, oh well.
Yeah. Bioshock has received some criticism about its morality system, perhaps being a little bit too black and white, to sort of be like, yeah, it's a little bit, like, weird. But also, like, the harvesting versus not harvesting little sisters, it comes up a lot in, like, the debate of whether it's pro or anti-objectivism based on which option is actually following the principles of objectivism. So there's arguments for not harvesting them being not objectivism, or there's arguments for not harvesting them being objectivism, which is interesting to me.
Well, something else interesting I saw is that the penalties, like the amount of Adam you get for saving them as opposed to harvesting them, is really not that much less. It's like 10% less. So there's really very little benefit to harvesting them.
Yeah.
Which some people have been like, well, that's kind of lame, right? If I'm barely making a choice here, like, why would I harvest them?
Yeah. I mean, especially, it feels like it would need to be dramatic to make you harvest a small girl child, but I don't know.
It's a video game.
Yes, but still. When we were, this is entirely off topic, but like Infamous, the developers were highly expecting, like, the bad ending to be canon, because they thought, like, you know, people would do that. But no, 75% of players went for the good ending. So people aren't that evil in video games just because it's a video game. Yeah. To put that out there.
Well, I mean, you know, in some ways, right? There are a lot of ways that we think of being evil in video games as being relatively fine, and a lot of this is something that Clickwhip Boyfriend and I want to talk about eventually in our yet to exist YouTube series, but of, like, the ethics that, like, you know, there's all sorts of things we do in video games that are bad.
Yes, sure. But, you know, there's a difference between, like, shooting some rando and harvesting small girl child.
Sure.
You know?
In the real world, less of a difference
I know,
than you'd think.
But you know, there's something more personal about it, you know?
Well, I know. But in the same way, it's like, I would feel a lot less remorse about, like, shooting a bunch of randos in, like, whatever, Uncharted.
Yes,
right?
But the point here is that I feel like even in a video game, you're faced with, like, small scared girl, and you're like, yeah, let me just, like, rip out her stomach. Let's do that.
I know, but, like, would you kick a dog for a free level up?
No.
Would you shoot a rando for a free level up?
It depends on the context.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. It's just interesting. It's interesting, the lines in video, like, we're like, yeah, it's fine that Nathan Drake can, like, shoot thousands of people, but harvest one little girl.
I mean, it depends on, it's the context too, right?
Know,
like, Uncharted presents it as no big deal, whereas you have to look into the eyes of this small child as you harvest them.
Fair.
So it feels like there should be, like, more of an incentive to do it, or else you won't get very many people doing it.
And evidently they didn't.
Although maybe that's the point, based on whether they, you know, want you to see it from whichever perspective you argue that is following.
Yeah.
So, like, either, like, there's a theory in objectivism that's, like, you don't have to do harm to others to help yourself, in which case not harvesting them would be following objectivism, but there's also, like, a spirit of kind of altruism and doing good in it as well, and doing something that doesn't, you know, that doesn't help yourself to help somebody else. That's also kind of not objectivism. So it's kind of murky.
Wow, objectively, the development process for this game was kind of unpleasant.
When are they not?
I know, but this one sounds particularly horrible. It's just like, they had to grow it from, like, a 6-team to a 60-person team, which was, like, no good, right? And also, they crunched for, like, 6 months. Because they had a crunch, and then the studio was like, we'll give you 3 more months. And they were like, great, let's keep doing this.
Yeah.
And also, it's just, like, apparently they, like, really hated the game's, I think, lead designer, Paul Hellquist. Like, they hated him. I don't, like, they just didn't include him in meetings. Like, I don't understand why. And so, like, part of his job near the end was to go back and add in, like, the flavor text, I think, for things. And to really, like, incentivize him, like, Ken Levine and his buddies, like, changed all the text to be, like, Paul Hellquist did not do his job. And there's none of this in the original game, but when the remaster came out, I guess it seems like they went back to like a slightly pre-release version of the game. And so if you like look up at a certain angle, you can like see something that's like Paul Hellquist did not do his job.
That's funny.
Yeah. Which he apparently took in good humor, but like also unpleasant.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's close with a quote from the Chicago Sun-Times review of the game, which is, "The rare mature video game that makes you think while you play." So rare. So rare.
Well, it was 2008.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. So, speaking of the threads of fate, the yarns of time. I was trying to think like the fates and like cutting strings and like time.
There's nothing like that in Bioshock.
But you said time. You're talking about 2008.
Okay, sure.
Speaking of games that make you think.
Yeah.
Speaking of games that were released on PlayStation consoles and Xbox consoles and Windows, Unravel 2.
Yep. So Unravel 2 is a sequel to the first Unravel. I don't believe they have really a sequential storyline, but you know, that's beyond whatever. That from Ubisoft, or part of Ubisoft.
I think technically it's Swedish studio Coldwood Interactive and published by EA. So actually not Ubisoft at all.
Why did I think it was Ubisoft?
I have no idea.
It shadow dropped during one of the E3 conferences, which I guess did Ubisoft even have a conference? Where did I get Ubisoft from? I don't know. Anyway, so they sort of dropped it all at once at an E3 conference, and people were very excited about it. So basically in Unravel, you play as Yarny, which is what it sounds like. It's a little yarn thing that's human-shaped, vaguely. It has, like, horns, but it's not evil, I assume. And in Unravel 2, the gimmick is that there are two Yarnies. So you can either control both Yarnies in a single player, or you can do it in local co-op with a friend.
The local co-op alone, and the fact that it's like $10 now, has convinced me I should probably get the game.
Yeah. No, the fact, when I saw it when it came out, I was like, man, Madelyn should get this.
Why didn't you tell me about it?
I thought I did.
You definitely didn't.
I'm sure I sent you a link on Facebook.
Whatever. That's not good enough.
Oh, well.
Whatever. When it came out, I was playing like 20 games. I'm still playing like 20 games, but a little bit less urgently these days.
Yeah. So it's kind of reminiscent, at least I kind of think of it in the vein of Little Big Planet.
I was thinking of that too.
In which you're sort of like a craft-based humanoid object, and there's some local co-op, and you have to sort of solve environmental puzzles to move across the screen in sort of a platformy type way. And so the gimmick of the local co-op is that both your Yarnies are connected. Your yarn has sort of fused magically together into so you're one big Yarny that's
I know. Is it
people.
really correct to refer to it as two Yarnies?
Yes, because they start out as two Yarnies and then the threads get fused together.
But are they then still two Yarnies? How do they have distinct consciousnesses? Can they sense the other Yarny's Yarny?
Well, it's a metaphor for multiple personality disorder.
No, it's not. It's a metaphor for friendship, Emma.
Okay. Well, then, would you refer to your best friend and yourself as I?
No, because I'm not literally connected.
Would you refer to conjoined twins as one person?
No, because they existed from the beginning as these two different consciousnesses. Although I'm not sure, can conjoined twins control, the other side of their body? I don't really understand. I'm certainly not an expert on conjoined twins.
Well,
right?
the Yarnies, like I said, are originally separate, and then they're fused together. So they exist as two separate entities that then share. It
presents an interesting philosophical dilemma if you play single player. Because in two-player, it's clear they have separate, they exist separately, they have separate consciousnesses, right? But in single-player, does that mean that they have fused into one strange two-headed Yarny?
I don't know.
I think that there's good evidence to believe yes.
Okay.
So there you go.
So in every game where you control 2 characters at the same time, are they then actually one being?
Maybe.
Okay. Sure.
Unless it's like Fire Emblem, right? Where it's like theoretically you're the tactician telling people where to go. Right? If they've given me an in-game explanation for why I am ordering them all around.
But what if there isn't an in-game tactician like in Fire Emblem 8?
Then they're all organisms sharing the same brain.
That's a little creepy.
Some kind of weird hive mind.
Yeah. But yeah, it very much reminds me of Little Big Planet in that way. Although, like, the environments are the environments are not crafty. They're just nature-based.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not, like, in a crafted world like you are in Little Big Planet,
Yeah.
but rather you are crafts exploring the real world.
Yeah. And you, just like in Little Big Planet, you can also, like, customize your yarnies to, you know, have different colors of yarn and look fun.
Yeah. I saw some things, too, that was, like, the original, like, didn't really have these options and was really bad for colorblind people.
Oops.
Because of the color combination, which I think was red against green a lot.
Yeah.
Which I think is a common colorblind thing.
Also very Christmassy.
It's true.
So, don't know why you'd pick that for your game that isn't holiday-themed anyway.
Well, I think it's more dark red versus natural greens as opposed to the, traditional bright red, bright green of Christmas.
Fair enough. Polygon said that it reminded them, I thought this was a weird comparison, a little bit of A Way Out, which we talked about a couple months ago now, and I was like, it has 2 people to play it.
You work together to solve puzzles.
Great. It's a local co-op game, not a local competition. I can't remember what the term is when you're locally fighting each other.
Local op.
Nice. Local combat operative.
A Way Out isn't... Oh, I guess it is near the end.
I'm not saying that A Way Out is a local com-op. I'm just saying that, like...
I made up that term. Please stop using it.
Local co-com.
Oh, no.
But I'm saying it is actually... They're both local co-op games. And unless... Yeah, you're right. Unless the Yarnies fight each other at the end. That's not quite the same.
I don't actually know if they do. I don't know if there's a big twist at the end of Unravel 2 in which you must...
You have to unravel
the
your
other
friend.
Yarny in the chest. Who knows?
Well, you're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
You're just playing it with your kids, and then suddenly in the last 15 minutes you're like, oh, wait. Oh, is this the +10 of the E +10 rating?
Oh my god.
I don't know if it's actually rated E +10. I'm sort of assuming.
Yeah. It just came out for the Switch, so I have to decide whether I want it on PS4 or on Switch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know enough about the controls to know if doing it on Switch will be difficult for me.
I feel like, for, this is just me, but, like, you should only get it on Switch if, like, there's a reason you would want to pull it out of the TV. Or, basically.
But don't I want to support the everything on Switch?
Do you? Do you want to support the everything on Switch mentality? I don't know.
Do I?
But yeah, like, things I have on Switch are very much like, I want to pull these out and move somewhere while I'm playing it. Or in the case of Vesperia, I'm going to have Kingdom Hearts 3 in the PS4 all the time and don't want to take it out if I want to play Vesperia.
So in the case of extreme laziness.
Yeah. Yeah, my Switch is very much like, oh, this is a little puzzle game that I can sit in the living room with, or I'm too lazy to pull discs out of my PS4. That's my buying strategies on that system.
It's Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3.
Yeah, or it's an exclusive, of which there are 2.
They're exactly
Even Octopath Traveler is coming to the PC, so that's not even a Switch exclusive anymore.
I know. Soon Mario will cross over. Yeah, I feel like Unravel is going to be difficult to mash up because I'm not necessarily moving to the mashup yet. I just think it's going to be difficult to mash up because it's sort of one of those games that does a lot with very little mechanics. It's a lot of sort of these physics-based puzzlers.
Yeah.
which I think is going to make for a tricky mashup. But I do like the idea of the Yarnies, and the name Yarny just feels good to say.
Yeah.
Yarny, Yarny, Yarny.
It's very anti-objectivism.
Oh my god. What does that even mean?
Well, it means that if you were to control your Yarny only to your own benefit, then you probably would not be able to clear obstacles, right?
That's true. Maybe.
So you'd have to make a compromise in which you're saying, okay, for right now, I'm not doing something for my own benefit, but rather something for your benefit, so that in the end, we can benefit together. But that's very much not, I think, what objectivists believe in.
Ayn Rand, and sorry, controversial, I don't think, opinion.
Yeah.
Is dumb.
I was reading a couple of articles about this debate, and one of them, finished up with, by the way, Ayn Rand died while taking Medicare and Social Security. Which is, so not an Ayn Rand thing to do, based on her writing. But yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. In the first one, it's more about, you are actually literally, I don't think you really unravel in this one, even though it's still called Unravel 2. You just ravel together.
Yeah.
I don't think ravel... Is ravel a word?
I don't know.
The more I say it, the more I'm like, I don't think it is.
Can
but
you
maybe
ravel
it is.
a ball of yarn?
Let's find out. But all this to say, and the first one is more about family, and right, you're sort of unraveling as you go through this. Maurice Ravel, French composer. Word.
He's so famous, his word has become...
weirdly, ravel means to unravel.
What?
To ravel means to unravel.
Oh, that does... raveled is something that I feel like I've heard.
Yeah, but it also means a knot. So somehow it means to untie a knot, but also a knot.
Weird. English is great, isn't it?
Isn't it?
The English language just, it's based on so much logic.
Today.
So much logic and makes sensitude.
Yeah. But the first game is sort of more about family and unraveling as you go away from the people you love. And Unravel 2 is more about youth and friendship. And the developers pulled a lot from sort of their childhood memories to make the, not the puzzles exactly, but the environments and the feel of it. Mm-hmm. Their goal with the first one was to make you call your mom. Mm-hmm. So with this one, it must be to make you, text your friends.
Yeah.
So shall we try to mash these into a Franken game?
We can sure give it our best shot.
Okay. So it's got to be about yarn people. I think that pretty much goes without saying.
Yeah.
Okay. It's got to have anti-piracy software on it. I forgot to talk about this with Bioshock, but it was during that, those 2 years where everyone hated Secure ROM so much. Uh-huh. This, DRM software. So it's got to have that on it just as, a throwback. It doesn't affect the game. But it's, all of a sudden, it's yeah, you have to verify this every 10 days. But, let's focus on the actual game. It has to make you think while you play.
Maybe there's some mechanic in which you can, forcibly take control of the other player's character.
Oh, this isn't friendly anymore.
Well, maybe, you learn by the end that this is bad. Maybe there's a morality system that if you take over more than once, you will steal nuclear weapons.
No, if you take over more than once, you absorb your friend by mistake at the end.
Oh, dear.
You no longer have your friend, you're just a two-headed Yarny creature.
So you only absorb their consciousness? You don't, unravel them all the way and, become a bigger Yarny?
No, I think it would be darker that you have to carry around their
corpse.
But it's not a corpse. You can, control it now.
Oh, God. Wow, so, Unravel 3, the horror experience.
Unravel 3, get raveled.
Get raveled. No gods or kings, only Yarnies.
What? Okay. So, what would be like an equivalent of like genetic material? Are you like looking for like silk yarn?
Maybe. I was just thinking just now, I was like, I would just play like a mod of Bioshock in which everybody's Yarny. I love that mod of Resident Evil 2 remake in which the Mr. X is Thomas the Train Engine, and he just follows you around.
Engine.
Thomas the Tank Engine?
Yes.
But he's a train.
Yes.
Whatever. Thomas the Tank Engine, and he just follows you around. So I think I would love it if everybody was a Yarny in Bioshock.
I have an idea. Okay, so I pretty much am just going to turn Bioshock into be a Bioshock. Nice. Bioshock into being about yarn. Okay?
Okay.
So you are a Yarny and you're attached to this other Yarny.
Okay.
And I like your mechanic of, like, you can take over the other person when they're being dumb, but, like, that means that you're going to eat them at the end.
But is it, like, whoever does it more? Or is there, like, a subservient one and a dominant one?
I think there are multiple endings depending on that.
Okay.
So if it's just like one person who's doing it, like if you're dragging along someone who sucks at the game and you aren't willing to teach them to be good at the game,
yeah,
and just like taking over, that means that like that one has to carry around the other Yarny.
But if you both do it, then you fuse into one like super being with two consciousnesses. Is that right?
Maybe, and you have to like fight all the time. Alternately, you just totally unravel. Or rabble.
Interesting.
I guess take your pick of which word you want to use. But here's my like plot for it. So the little sisters in this are actually silkworms.
Okay.
And so you have to decide as you're going around through Raveltown, whether to harvest the silk forcibly from the silkworms by like cutting them open, right? Or by befriending them and taking their silk gently and gradually over time to make you stronger. But in the end, you've been like sort of following these mysterious instructions that you've been given, these like step-by-step instructions, and you realize at the end that when you meet the knitter, who's your mother,
who's your mother? Okay,
and the knitter is like been holding, you've been like following a string,
okay,
right as you go along, you've been like following a string. That's like connected to one of your feet, and the knitter has that string, and she can unravel you if you don't do what she says.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so you have to do what she says until she asks you to cut yourself apart from your friend, and you won't do it, and you stab her with knitting needles, and take control of your own destiny, unless you've taken control of each other a lot, in which case...
Because there's a string attached to your foot, does that mean that you then drag the corpse of your mother around with you?
No, she's not, like, tied. She's holding the string. Okay. She's not, like, tied to the string.
Okay.
Duh.
Oh, well, yes, of course, duh.
But you do take on the knitting needle as a staff, where you rule benevolently, or malevolently, depending on if you get the bad ending.
This sure is a game.
I'm not sure who this would appeal to.
I'm not sure, like, how we would even market this. Like, what would the trailer look like for this game?
It'd be like, it would have, like, that, like, you know that sound the guy made at PAX? The, like, boom.
Yeah.
It would have that sound a lot.
Okay.
And just little, like, flashes of the game, and the Yarny's looking scared and fierce. Yarn having to wash the blood out of the yarn.
In a world where the Yarny's society has crumbled, you, along with your companion, must save the day and or ruin the day.
Are there other yarn people?
Well, you know, if we're following, like, Bioshock a little bit, there's, like, the people who attack you because they're all hopped up on Adam, right? I don't really know.
Oh, yeah, I don't know who's protecting the, little slugs.
Yeah.
Silkworms.
Just a big ball of yarn. The Big Daddies are kind of circular shaped.
They are.
So it's just like a big ball of yarn with like a face.
And the final boss, once you fight, once you kill your knitter, you have to fight her cat.
Does everybody have a knitter? Like, are we going like
I guess.
in deep here?
Sure.
Or is this like a special one who's knit all the Yarnies?
I think
like,
maybe
does everyone
she's
have
all the Yarnies?
all the Yarnies? Okay, so she's God.
Yes.
She's the Yarny God.
Persona 5R. The yarn.
They're throwing you off because you thought the R would start the word, but it's actually in the middle of the word.
And 5S is just, it's string instead of yarn.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end, the final battle is you take her knitting needles to, like, fight her cat, like, with a lance. Because the cat wants to play. You're really cat toys.
So it's that one fight from Kingdom Hearts, Birth by Sleep.
Yes.
In which you could get up on a ball of yarn and actually roll
That
around.
would be weird in this case. That would be, like, rolling around on body parts.
Oh my gosh.
So we're not gonna do that. It's just gonna be, like, a jousting battle.
Just a jousting
Like,
battle.
you know, like when the like bear hunters, right? Like they have like the sticks. And
Isn't I guess so. That's not really jousting. It's
I
more
didn't
like
really
a
mean it to
bull.
be
It's more like
jousting.
bullfighting.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, in which you use your companion as the cape.
Correct. Yes, you have to work together to like distract it to go one way while the other person, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, speaking of things that, this is good because it also works in the like, man, hurting animals is not something we're super comfortable with in games.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Don't think about it too much.
It's okay. If we make the cat big and evil enough, that's fine.
Yeah, it'll have horns. Then you live yarnily ever after.
And or, you know, you yarn over I can't think of a pun really for being a malevolent dictator of yarn.
Yeah, me either.
So, hey EA.
We got a pitch for you.
Oh boy, we got something for you. We'll think about the games as service aspect a little bit more, but I think you can see that we've got promising spin-off.
There's a clear audience for this game.
There's such a clear audience.
I know what you're thinking. Can you make it more accessible? The answer? No.
No.
Oh man. That was one of our weirdest ones in a while, I think. Most in detail in a while.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thanks for tuning in for this episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
We've been your hosts, Madelyn
And Emma.
and thanks for bearing with us through that Yarny adventure. You'll see it on the PS4, the Xbox, Windows, and coming about a year later, the Switch sometime. In the meantime, while you're waiting for Yarny 3, the Raveling through Raveltown.
Raveling.
Working title. Why don't you subscribe to the show? Hey, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and the Pandora app. So you can listen to us pretty much wherever podcasts are found. So subscribe while you're there. Leave us a rating and a review if you like. We love those. And also, while you're waiting for next week's episode, check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can check out our blog featuring long-running series, Clickbait Boyfriend, and it's not called Watch This anymore, I almost said that, Split Screen, a subsidiary of Watch This, as well as various other blog content. I think we're going to have a couple of one-off blogs coming pretty soon. You should also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast, and YouTube at Talk This Sisters, where there's a relatively new Now Play This series video that you should check out. I think that pretty much covers it. Are we ready to pick games for in 2 weeks for the next main quest?
Yeah, I think we're ready.
All right. How are we doing today?
I have my random picker open, so.
Nice. I love random pickers.
miniwebtool.com/random.
Oh, I thought that was the
picker
game. I was like, mini web tool? What the heck is that?
No, I thought you asked how are we doing it today?
Yeah.
And I gave you the answer to
Shout
that
out
question.
to Mini Web Tool, not sponsored. Just love the product.
Okay, for our old game, we are talking about Dragon Quest.
Nice. Getting questy with it.
Sure. And for our new game, we are talking about... Sorry, I'm getting some ones we've already done because I haven't totally updated the list yet.
My God.
We're talking about Hades.
Nice.
Cool.
It's going to be a very mythological episode in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So tune in 2 weeks to hear us talk about Dragon Quest and Hades. And tune in next week for a side quest episode where we talk about what we've been playing, some thoughts on various game news, and other updates. And where we absolutely forget that we will be talking about Dragon Quest and Hades the following week.
Is there mythology in Dragon Quest?
It's about dragons.
I guess so. Is that mythology?
Are dragons real, Emma?
Well, yeah, but, like, is there an actual distinction between, like, mythology and, like, fairy tales?
No. Don't get me
No?
don't get me started on mythology.
Okay.
Don't get me... Okay, are we ready for my whole presentation on modern mythology and how myth-making is a verb?
Oh, boy, it looks like we're out of time.
Don't get me started. Alright, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We won't see you, but you'll hear us again next week. And shall I sign it off?
Go ahead.
Alright, folks. I hope that this week you find whatever the antonym is of ravel and unravel and roll up your yarn into a nice neat ball.